Which room?
We're up at the top.
Okay.
No trustees online. We're ready when you guys are ready.
Pass was easy.
Good.
I'm not. Thank you.
For March 6th, 2024, with a Victoria Village update.
Hello. Do we have to, are there rules at this meeting or is this one a little more open format? Okay. Okay. Oh, draft.
Live, so.
I'm Matt Ginsberg with Mount Affordable Housing Development, which is the group of folks that is working on developing Victoria Village. Todd is here on my left. Todd has a pinched nerve, so he's going to stay seated during this presentation. Either that or because I wasn't here live at the last presentation, I get to stand up here. So you decide. I'll hop right into it. We can go to the second page on that thing. We had a meeting with you all mid-January, where we received a lot of, I thought, well, good feedback. And we hadn't met in the recent past before that, so it was appropriate feedback. And then we took that feedback away, and we had a couple of meetings. We had a coffee shop meeting, which I can't think of what that's called, open house. And we had a couple of meetings with folks on the board and the staff. And we've, tightened the screws and rethought about unit mix, et cetera. And that's what you're seeing here today and what I'll walk through. Don't hold your questions till the end. That didn't work as well as we thought last time. So, please go ahead and shout out whatever is on your mind as we proceed through. This page you've all seen before. It's phasing on the project. The plan, as you'll see here, is to move building C and E forward under the municipal bond offering structure. So those will be middle income homes, and building D under LIHTC. It is possible that we might swing building B in there. There are some complications about that because it lies within the floodplain. So there's some permitting issues that might affect our competitiveness. On the other hand, having more units for any subsidy increases your competitiveness because the subsidy per unit goes down. So we are in a balancing act there and proceeding forward with designing both, and we'll see if we will be able to include them both or not in the sort of August 1st 4% and Colorado State LIHTC process. So, which all means that the bar chart diagram at the bottom is totally wrong, other than the St. Louis Creek and the bridge install and the phase 1 groundbreaking. So apologies for that, and we'll send out an updated one after this, but ignore, please. I'm gonna maybe go to sort of the compare contrast from the first, from what we did in January here, so you can kind of see what the improvements are, and then we can flip back to the next page in here, which is sort of structure, which I'm sure is super interesting to everybody, but maybe more appropriate later in the presentation. Let's go to page 4, the next one. So this is sources and uses, and we can talk about the sources and the uses here in a minute, but let's talk about what the AMI and the unit mix looks like here for buildings C, D, and E. So we are at 123 units, balanced much more heavily towards smaller studio and one-bedroom units as compared to where we were, a month and a half ago. And we are just barely under 100% AMI on average across all those units, whereas we were sort of around 160 before. It is not magic how we got there. The rest of the presentation will kind of go through some of the finer points on how does one get to that. And for that, I might even skip to page 6. I'm kind of speeding through to make sure we have time for discussion. So again, please stop me if you got questions. Unit mix on the left-hand side. We had 0 studios. We now have 20% of the unit mix as studios. One beds, we went from 20% to almost 40%, 37%. 2 beds, we went down from 56% to 30%. And 3 beds, we halved the number of 3 beds we had and went down 12% of total from 24%. And in increasing the density for the same square foot plate, obviously we got more total units, smaller units, more units, which is good. Which means that in the CDE building scenario, so this first phase, based on the AMIs, will meet the obligations that the town signed up for under the grant process that got the land for the project.
Hey, Matt, can I?
Yes, sir.
For 1 minute, I apologize. Troy, Big Valley Construction.
Come on up, Mike, people gotta hear you.
We're moving very rapidly with design phases and just had our weekly OAC call the other day. Does this unit mix feel a lot better than what it did in January? Because we don't want to waste anybody's time or anybody's money and continue down this path. And I know that we'll have comments and questions and more discussion, but does this unit mix feel a lot better where we can keep heading down that path in the design phases? I just wanted to open that up
Yeah.
a little more because this is where we're headed. Does it feel a lot better?
Are we putting the 3 bedrooms above the daycare? More or less? Okay.
Yeah. No, I think it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. to-
Much better.
Is
I just thought that was important with where we're headed
Yeah.
with the document.
Good.
Yes.
Is it building D that has the daycare in it?
E.
E. Are those all going to be 3-bed?
No, they're
Units?
mostly 2. There's 6 2-beds and 2 3-beds per floor. And there's 3 floors of units because there's 1 floor of daycare.
Got it. Okay.
So actually, great point, Troy.
interrupt.
No. I mean, I think, why don't we talk about where we're going? What's the point of this conversation? Obviously, it's a workshop, so it's not the official take a decision, but we are pushing forward this because if we don't push forward this, we don't get anything up out of the ground this year. So, if we want to make tweaks around the edge, if we want to make a wholesale change, I guess, I could stay up all night, and we'll do it if we have to. If we want to make some tweaks around the edges, let's do that. But like conceptually, if we can kind of get feedback and decide where we're going today, and if this meets the expectations, then we kind of want to hear that or see heads nodding in that direction so that we continue. Because as you'll see, particularly with the dynamics going on the town board and elections and things like that, where we have a very specific small hole that we're going to try to fit all the scheduling and programming through. So
Matt, let me
please.
My name's Todd Moore, for those that didn't remember, but with respect to the unit mix, we've been working on that iteratively with the town staff and trustees over the last 4 weeks. It's been a huge point of.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's been a huge point of focus for us because until that's set, it's really hard to solidify the footprints for each of the buildings, which is obviously a first step in being able to get a site plan and work on your grading and ultimately set up the platting. So it's definitely the first domino that's been needed to fall. So I think we're there, and that's what we're proceeding with. But it's taken I think a fair amount of time, but I think that the mix here that we have here is definitely doable. So it's been time very well spent. So
Is
anyways,
building A still planned to be mostly studios and 1 bedrooms? Is that for building A?
likely that's what it's forecast at now. But
Okay.
yes,
Awesome.
Okay, so that's changes in the unit mix. Like I said, denser, more smaller units. That was a lot of the feedback. That allows the sort of revenue per square foot to go up, which helps in the in bringing down the overall AMI. On the right-hand side of the page, a couple other things that help in bringing down the overall AMI. We made some adjustments to our expected construction and permanent interest rates. You know, the general view is that the Fed will probably reduce interest rates towards the end of the year. And there's also some nice features about the project, like the inclusion of grandkids, like the potential inclusion of the post office, that should allow us to kind of push on the interest rate in the market and have it be a unique offering in the bond market rather than kind of a stock housing offering. So we talked to a couple of different bankers, particularly Stifel Nicholas, and they said 625 may be doable towards the end of the year. So and then the construction interest is going to be lower by taking the project through the bond offering, because you raise the bonds first and they're at the permanent interest rate rather than a high rate construction loan. Now that'll be different on the LIHTC, which is why I don't see the whole thing given back. Contingency, this is probably like the most important feature. So if this were a purely private deal, and we were talking about private equity investors, we would keep 15, maybe 20 to 25% contingency on the project. All that serves to do is to prove that the project can ride through, the worst case scenarios, and also bump up the overall AMI on the project. So we've taken out a good bit of the contingency. We are progressing through programming and design. I mean, what we're saying to you is, if it were purely private, we probably would be holding the contingency, but that's going to happen one way or another. We are going to work hard to keep it with our partners, to keep it as tight and as efficient as we possibly can. In other projects we've executed together, we have been so far under our contingency. So we would expect to. We think it's okay to analyze it this way, and it gives you more of a view of what the outcome really will be. If conditions change, if prices of goods change, if rates change, everybody in the room knows that we may all have to sit down and make some hard decisions. But it wasn't doing anything for us to sort of stuff that in the bottom of the pro forma and then have the output be higher AMIs that weren't making everybody think that the project was worthwhile proceeding, because that would sort of be a wrong conclusion. So I feel like that was a lot of information. So just pause for questions.
Thank you.
Okay. We also went back with the architect and the contractor and redesigned the size of the units based on some of the feedback in that open house. There were some units that one bedrooms or studios that were a little smaller than what we were designing. So we've shrunk those by, as you can see, about 6.5%. That means that the whole building shrinks, which means that it's cheaper to build, which means that we can achieve lower AMIs. And the other nice thing about that is that since we had a group of constituents from the town, they were like, proof that was a size that cleared the market at the rates that they cleared the market. So, there's sort of no wondering about what the economics might look like, or if you can sell, so to speak, or lease that size unit. So I won't read the numbers. You can all read the numbers, but the units are slightly smaller, with the exception of building E. Building E is larger, not than it was, but just larger as it is, because it has the Grandkids Learning Center in the base. Grandkids Learning Center has an amount of space that they need for being able to manage the amount of kids that make the whole pro forma for them work, et cetera. Shrinking it was not really an option. Those units we could do a couple of things with. We can target them towards a little bit higher AMI. So maybe we get a 120 or 140% person there, and we're getting 80s to 120s in the other buildings, because they're larger. In any case, what we've asked Grandkids to do is ante in some capital up front to close the gap between the fact that the building's a little bit larger, a little bit more expensive, then it would have to be. Does that kind of make sense? So we didn't want a lot of conversation or wondering about, who's subsidizing whom. So we're trying to level the differential between,
So
yes.
grandkids, can you afford that?
You must approach the podium.
Hi, Ashley Bobo, Director of Great Kids Learning Center. We have a lot of opportunities for grant and fundraising once we have final budget numbers and pro forma complete with agreements. So
Okay.
we feel very confident based on what is available that we can raise those funds for sure.
Wonderful.
Yep.
Thank you.
Another point that falls out of all this, which the sort of value engineering that we did, which will be important to the group here, is that the support payment that we were talking about having from the town, which was $500,000 a year for 15 years, we've now brought it down to half that, $250,000 for 15 years, which hopefully is more palatable. But it's another thing that we should definitely talk about tonight, because if people don't like it or don't think they can get behind supporting it, or if it just simply doesn't work, then we want to go back and move the pieces around again. And then just to be clear again, C&E, middle income, D, LIHTC. So D will be an average, we are expecting it to be an average income LIHTC project. So 60% on average, which means we can have units around that between 0 in theory and 80%. But they will average to 60, right? So
Okay. Are you still looking at commercial on the ground floor?
we are still thinking about commercial on the ground floor.
Okay.
Yes, it is doable. We need to condominiumize the commercial out from the LIHTC project.
Okay.
Clark, do you mind? When you did your project, because I know you just leased it all up, or at least mostly, did that 60% AMI, were there a lot of people in that group? Or did you need to be lower than that?
Well, we average 60.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Hello, we average 60. So we have 30 to 80%. The easy ones were 60, 70, 80s. Those were gone immediately. 1-bedrooms were gone first. 30%, oddly enough, we thought were going to be the hardest. They actually filled up next. Then 40s and 50% were, oddly enough, one of the more tough ones to fill up. I think partly too with our unit mix, we had designated units, and I don't think we got that right on, I think we had some 3-bedrooms and things like that, which I know we've already recommended that you guys do fewer 3-bedrooms. Does that answer your question?
Yep.
So,
Thanks.
So we will take we will have different units at different levels, but the average of the units won't exceed 60. That's
No, just because we had to go
Oh,
through that.
okay,
helped
got it.
remind I just wanted everybody to know that we're in the right ballpark, so.
cool.
Yeah.
I think
Hold on, you can't think yet.
You're like, man.
I think averaging 60 is what you guys should be focused on. And now we are fully leased up. And now we're building a waiting list. We actually have applicants applying, and which is nice, that we can kind of pre-confirm there. What's very complicated about LIHTC is the approval processes and getting people through that. So, it was not easy. I mean, you guys know it wasn't easy, and you've heard my challenges that we faced with it. We fought through it. It took 4 months longer than we expected to lease up. And I do think part of that was management driven, part of it was marketing and unknowing. And I think now that people know about it, it's proving to work a little bit better. And that shows, and you guys are welcome. Terry offered to talk to you guys anytime. That shows in the fact that she's building a wait list now of qualified applicants, so that if we have a vacancy happen, it's much easier to put somebody in there on short notice.
I can't help you. You can't see either.
We have 60 units total. And they're 1, 2, and 3-bedroom mixed.
in the product. And I can't remember the breakout of what we did. I do remember, the chaff of board that we had to interview.
No,
Yeah, I
we're
think-
cutting you off, clerk. Okay. Let's,
They questioned the 3 bedrooms, and I advocated for them and explained my reasoning for the 3 bedrooms. And I don't think it's typical, Matt probably knows better than I do, in LIHTC to have a lot of 3 bedrooms. It's more 1 and 2 bedroom mix. I think they've done enough of them. They know that's where the market is. And just given our proximity to elementary school and my belief that we had families that need them, which we do have some great families in there, but they were the most challenging to lease up, were the 3 bedrooms. Okay.
Okay,
so with the, I'm
Yes.
curious, so with B, once we get that going, and probably A, and they're eligible for the LIHTC. So with those tax credits, does that enable us to bring that average AMI down to an 80% from 100? Because
Well,
right now
let's-
your numbers work quite nicely, but it's our average, overall average is 99, but we're offering a number of different products, which is great, which is what we
that's,
wanted to do.
that's right. And I thought you might ask that question. So let's, flip to page 7, I guess the next one here.
Yeah, that's a great.
It's kind of small, but can't fit that many numbers on the page without it being kind of small. So thankfully you have
But
it.
don't talk too fast or I won't be able to
Right.
understand you.
So left-hand side was January, for all the reasons that we've already been over. Larger units, fewer units, higher AMIs, unsatisfying result. So avert your eyes. Right-hand side, you can see that sort of grouping in the middle of 1, 2, and we do have a couple of 3 bedrooms, which, sounds like maybe one of the things we might adjust after this conversation is to think about removing some of those from the D building. But all those units that are in the 40 to 70 range, those are sorry, maybe the 80 as well. Those are the building D units, right? So that's like if you want to call it the striation, the distribution of affordable units in the LIHTC building. And that can move around. That's not other than number of bedrooms, that can move around in terms of number of AMI, right? So we can have a few more, a few less at different levels, as long as the average is 60. And that number of units at 60, and then the units you see below there at 100 and 120 are what get us to 99. None of those units at any particular AMI is like stuck there. They can all be moved around as long as, 1, the LIHTC building stays below 60. Let's say it's 59.999. And 2, the rest of the units in combination with the LIHTC building mean that overall we have more than 50% of the units under 120. Which, given this arrangement, it would be hard to see how you would not get there.
Okay.
Meaning because everything's at 120 or below. So Katie, I mean, to sort of like play an example here, the 26 2-bedrooms that you see at 120%, this is like pure simplicity for me because there's a lot of little blocks on the page and I could place those anywhere when solving this. But in the end, we kind of want to think about the whole project as an average. Like, how do we get to what is the average AMI across the project? So we could say do 10 at 100, 6 at 120, and 10 at 140, and get to pretty much the same financial result, for
Yeah.
instance, right?
I think we want to keep everything at 120 and below, personally.
Right.
Yeah.
We had talked about that in the
Yeah.
beginning.
What
No.
is 140 AMI?
It's on the
Like, you
here.
might ask that. So
Mhm.
I can
Yeah,
flip back a
140
couple of
AMI
pages
for a
to the
3
final
bedroom is
page.
3287.
Right, but what do they make?
They may,
140?
151,000. This is a very useful chart.
Also dense, but you know. And then in the far side, if you're working, I think that is 48 weeks a year and 40 hours a week, if I remember correctly. That would be your hourly wage. There should be a footnote on there. I think at a 2-person annual income. Or sorry, 1-person annual income, because it wouldn't make any sense. if it
So,
was 2%.
so the annual income for 140% AMI for 2 people is 104,580. Is that what I'm saying?
Correct.
Okay. I mean, it's not that big of a stretch. I don't know. I mean, I understand we want to keep rents low, but if we can have more rents, more units in the lower and have a couple units that are in the higher.
Well, the open market, product, take care of that.
Yeah.
Your general contractors and general builders that are doing apartment stuff, let them take the 120 to 180% AMI people. Those are gonna be the guys that are computer programmers, doctors, lawyers that are on sabbatical. Right.
Right.
Well, that's if they declare all the tips, dear. That's if they declare all their tips.
I think the important thing is that we're not locked in. Like in the Tech building, we're locked into being average 60 and
Right.
below 80, right?
Yeah.
And in the rest, it's, and we'll get back to the ownership structure. It's the group's choice, right? Like, and it's going to be based on need. And if for some reason need, like the hospital opens up and you have a bunch of folks that can afford 140 or 160, and that makes sense, and you don't have other people that are at lower ranges, you take the 160. You are able to cash flow the building earlier. You're the owner, so you're able to do more projects with that, right? So,
Right.
or you deepen the affordability. You know, you get down to 80 or 60, even though it's not a Tech project. So
Right.
ultimately it's an average.
Yep.
But overall, we were able to, like I said, value engineer it and bring the average into a realm of that is more palatable and maybe. Yep. Okay. Let's see. Let's go. So like if we're pretty good on unit mix and AMI, I'm gonna kind of go to.
Well, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
So I'm just looking at, do you have a sheet that shows sorry, I'm at the microphone now. Do you have a sheet that shows the monthly rental rates for 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms at these percentages?
Yeah, the last one in the.
It's in here, okay.
Yep.
But you've got 96 units out of 123 at 120% of median income. And 120% of median income for a 1-bedroom right now today in Grand County is $1,962 a month.
Mhm.
It Chaffa numbers, but which Tech you'd be stuck with those, non-Tech not. But if you're going to use this table, and guys, we're building 60 more units of free market that's permitted. And building permits aren't issued yet, but they will be. The plats are done. And next to the mill, either side of the mill, same buildings. Those are free market. And our pro forma rents, happy to send them to you, Michael, are lower than these. Okay. And in other words, I mean, I think there's a tough threshold that I kind of learned the hard way of what people can afford monthly rental wise here. And, there is a professional group here, certainly that can afford free market, but you get up to a certain level, they might as well be buying something and doing a mortgage. I mean, I just think you got to be really cognizant about what the market is and where the demand is. And like if you're trying to satisfy workforce, is it workforce for service workers in the restaurants? Or is it for the professional lawyer in town or the professional manager in town? Like, who are you targeting and what's your goal? Because I don't think that's been done.
The teachers, we've talked about it.
Well, like teachers,
The
teachers a great
teachers
example.
From there, that's why the district goes so
Yeah.
far.
Yeah.
Firefighters.
But I
a
have
lot of
ideas on
firefighters
that.
here.
And I think most of them
So,
probably
mid-range
need to be in a free
professionals.
market. The teachers. All I'm saying is 96 units out of 123 is a high number at what are effectively free market rates. So you guys are basically building free market apartments. I just want y'all to understand that. Okay, so it's really not affordable. I mean, you've got some units that are affordable, but I can tell you for the people that we rented to, and you go compare our rent stack to this, like we're a fraction of what y'all are proposing to charge people for rents
Okay,
at the mill. Okay,
thank you, Clark.
thanks, Eileen.
Can you send that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Matthew, with what Clark just said, we can adjust those rents lower. The issue would be more debt, longer payoff.
I would, let's go back to maybe page 3, 4.
Because I just don't think we'd let the unit sit empty, so we put.
No,
No.
so next one. Thank you. Yes, you can adjust those lower. I mean, the sources, right, are going to drive how you can adjust that, right? Well, since we're sort of leaving out LIHTC, let's go one more page to page 5. So this is a look at sources and uses for just C&E, right? No LIHTC. This is the publicly offered tax exempt debt. And then you can see sort of all the other sources. So some grant funding, which the town has been dutifully working on with the More Housing Now and Stronger Communities. Some town funding, some contribution from grandkids, and then the sort of bridge or mezzanine financing from CHAFA. It's called the sub-debt CHAFA. And then DOH, I think it's called the Housing Grant Program, where they offer up to $50,000 a unit. So depending on rates, which get adjusted in the pro forma constantly based on the market, that senior debt number might go up or down. And if rates went down, then, you know, a lot of those other things in there would be able to disappear, and the cost of financing would go down, and then the cost of running the building would go down. So your rents could go down. And then I guess the other point here, you know, I think the 96 units that I think that Clark is referring to are at 100 and 120 for convenience, but really they're on average about 111%. So it would have behooved me to have calculated 111% on that very last page, but we could all do it together, or we can do it offline if you like. But it's somewhere lower than the number that Clark. Let's do it. A 1-bedroom at 111% is probably right about 1825, 1850.
That's starting to dip into free market.
Well, so
Not
the AMI rents and the AMI salaries or whatever, annual income, it's based off of basically 30% of what you make, right?
Yep.
I mean, that's kind of what everybody goes off of. Your cost of living for your housing should be about 30% of what you make.
That's what the government does to make you feel good about your living situation. What
Is
you
that-
try to do is try to get your rents down to about 20% of what you make, so you can actually enjoy your life up here instead of just
Yeah.
working for rent. So the nice thing about the way we set up they set up, I guess, the ownership is people can also put money into it as an exchange. If they want to get a density bonus, they can put money into this project, and we can work out a density bonus to lower our cost, which then makes us able to lower the rents. So if we just got to figure out how to work those mechanisms better. And you can also, like somebody building up in Winter Park, they don't have housing, they can put money into here so they can take care of their housing credit. Because of the way they set up the structure, I thought it was really well done on the structure, Matthew. So
Thank you.
I think that was really good.
That's where I'm gonna go next, but I would just say this, like, I'm reporting the facts. The facts are that we've collected the cost to build, and we've tightened things up. Could we go cut out another 2 feet in the units? Yeah, sure. They'll become pretty small, but if that's what everybody wants to do, then we could tighten it up. And the facts are that rates suck. It is a terrible time to build real estate. Nonetheless, some people are doing it, and everybody needs it still, right? So we're as a group, like, you know, just we are receivers of what the facts are in the market. if we're able to, if Big Valley prices up the designs that are coming out of ESA now, and we're able to bring in the cost, or we find a couple of, or we're able to do, all electric, and the IRA bill allows us to, sort of like subsidize the rest of the cost of the building because we're able to get free HVAC, because the government gave us a tax credit. We will be able to tighten this up. This is our best guess at the moment because we don't have final engineering, right? As we proceed through, we're going to continue to update the group, and the costs will hopefully stay about the same. Maybe it could come down a little bit. Maybe we've been conservative in other spots. I wouldn't bank on that. I don't even want, I'm unhappy this is recorded. It's not likely to go that way. Inflation, as you all know, but that's it. Like you put the cost in, put the rents in, spits out a cap rate. Cap rate's lower than market, so that's why in this sources and uses you see a bunch of non-dilutive funding, right? Grants and things like that are there to bridge the gap where otherwise sort of equity would be. So, shall we go to any questions? Got 20 minutes left, eh?
I'd just like to add just one thing regarding the construction costs. There's no scenario where we're not seeing the invoices for construction costs. I think to Matt's point, the costs are going to be what the costs are. Maybe they come in lower, maybe they come in higher. This also has some good assumptions that our grant funding strategy, we have some success with $3 million. We currently have applied for 6. We're hopeful that we can get 3. Maybe we get a little bit more, maybe we get a little bit less. So, I think the assumptions are pretty fair. We're hopeful. We need to see, we're going to hopefully see some results here from our grant strategy here soon. Not to say that we can't continue to pursue grants to help offset costs and bring down AMIs for even just a short period of time here and there. But ultimately the costs are what they are. And, there's not going to be just a bunch of invoicing to the town for payments and such that we're not seeing the actual invoices for.
Welcome to owning second homes.
And the other thing I would say just regarding, comparing this to market rate, and I'm sure that you have all experienced the same thing. We've had several employees who have had market rate housing and have had to deal with the panic of trying to find a unit because they're getting kicked out for whatever reason. Maybe they're jacking up the rent dramatically. Maybe they're converting it. They're moving back into their home. Maybe they're converting it to a short-term rental. Maybe they're selling. So this solidifies that security, which I think is a really important part of just providing a quality of life to our local residents and workforce.
That's very valid.
So just something I would just point out there. Even if you're at 120%, if it's something that you can maintain as far as quality of life and comfort level, hopefully your income goes up as you continue to live here. But that fear of losing your house, I think, is a valid fear. And if you've talked to people who have gone through that, it's tough, especially if you have, more than just yourself to take care of. So,
3 kids, dog. It's always fun to move out.
Yeah, that's very valid.
Yeah, and the thing too, the unit sizes that are on here are market rate unit sizes. Most of Winter Park Lodge 2, Meadow Ridge, these are about the same size units that they have up in there.
Good.
So if we do need to make the units smaller, we could, but we don't have to do it on the first 2 buildings. We can do it on the rest of the project, right? There's ways to massage the numbers to get it to work as we see how it starts to play out.
And you were just referring to quality of life?
Yeah, right.
And that's
I
a part of it.
had 5 people in 600 square feet. It's it's not bad, but it's cozy.
Way back when you were young,
No, in my current house right now.
right now,
Yeah, I live on Clayton Court.
5 of you?
Well, not now. They moved out. They got older.
Oh,
27,
well, there you go.
25. and
When they were little. Yeah, I know, it's amazing.
Kept it warm.
Tiny stove, man. House is still warm.
Could we flip up a page, please? I guess, sorry, up
I
a
guess
bunch
I'm
of
actually
pages.
Easton.
Oh, other way, sorry. There we go. Thank you. Okay, let's talk about the ownership structure here, the benefits to the town, and then path forward in the next 17 minutes. And what do we got left? This is the proposed ownership structure. At the top, you will see Town of Fraser or Fraser River Valley Housing Partnership. There's a bunch of smart lawyers and tax people who will advise on which one of those it is. In order to access the municipal bonds structure for the middle income housing stuff, that entity on top, whichever it is, will form a corporation and granted some of its powers, including those to issue bonds. And it'll issue a project bond. So the bond will be supported by any revenues coming into the project from rent, from the town doing the $250,000 a year, from Fraser River Valley Housing Partnership, for instance, wanted to contribute any money to it for that would also, if anybody else in the room wants to contribute money, anything that goes in there is financeable, right? Subject to credit and reliability of people contributing capital. And so that will the town would need to put in the land. Might be able to do it a long-term lease, but putting the land in directly would be sort of the most straightforward. And then that entity will get a board, and the board will be determined by whoever's at the top of that ownership structure. So you will appoint the board if it's town, or Fraser River Housing Partnership will appoint the board if it's them, which will include could include many of you, could include other folks that are interested in helping manage the town's housing need. That entity will sign sort of two critical contracts. One is a project development agreement. We propose it be with us for obvious reasons. And we will continue developing the project. But whoever it signs with, that person will continue developing the project. And that person will go and engage Big Valley and ESA and proceed in doing the final design and the engineering and going through the FEMA and the Army Corps of Engineers process around St. Louis Creek and all the things that are necessary to ultimately end up with rentable units coming out of the ground towards the end of 25, early 26. The other thing it'll sign is a qualified operator agreement with a qualified property manager. That's a little down the line. Again, you're going to have a board there, so you will have perfect clarity into what's going on at that entity level and the agreements that it's making and the challenges and tribulations of it trying to develop housing.
Do you know, will this board, I'm sure there's some kind of legal structure to it. Will it be accountable to the Board of Trustees for larger decisions or cash outlay or that sort of thing? Or is it a standalone or? Because the town of Fraser owns it?
It operates, I believe, pretty independently, but that's a great question we can follow up specifically on.
Yeah,
I think
later.
it's accountable in the sense that it gets appointed. So if it's not particularly good, it could be reappointed.
Okay,
So let's say
Okay.
yes, it is accountable.
okay. The trustees on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the logical would be that a couple of trustees are already would be on the board, and then you
Mhm.
think about who else makes sense from the community to be on the board.
Okay.
But counter to the last time I put boxes and arrows in front of a group of people where it was pointed out that I didn't quite have the right mix of numbers. This one's easy. You own 100% of the project, right? So the benefits and burdens ultimately accrue to the ownership, so town or partnership or whomever it is, some municipal entity. Questions?
Well, I'm just gonna there's another unit, I think Winter Park Meadows or something like that. The green units right in front of Winter Park Lodge 2. What they basically did is took trailers, stacked them on top of each other, and framed around them. I mean, they're 350 square feet and they're a tunnel. You walk in the living room, kitchen, and in the back is the bedroom. If you haven't ever been in those. And 2 people can fit in there, but it's tight. And right now they're selling between $250,000 and $300,000 for that square footage.
Huh.
To give you an idea of what costs are out there, what people are willing to pay for, and
Interesting.
what they'll pay mortgages on.
Okay, but we're renting at this stage.
Well, rent and mortgage, they come close together. If it's cheaper to have a mortgage than it is to rent, people can get a mortgage.
Well,
If it's
good.
cheaper to rent.
That's
rent.
fine.
There's a lot of programs that help with down payments.
Yeah.
They're not great, but there are programs. But just to give you an idea that we can go with a smaller unit because people will buy them, they will rent them, they will use them.
Okay.
So
Right now, I like the size that we've got.
You know, not just.
do too. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, look, I'm not leaning over the desk, so that's a good. start.
Thank you. That's why I came up with that. Yeah, I mean, the project will also benefit from, again, the conditions in the market, right? So if rates go from 6.5% to 3.5%, and we're able to issue bonds, there is some ability to defease the bonds and reissue new bonds at a lower rate that'll ultimately save the project costs, which would allow to achieve lower AMIs, right? If you wipe out 300 basis points on $40 million of debt or $30 million of debt, that should help quite a bit in achieving lower AMIs.
Right. You know, at some point, the town might just have to put in money just to put in money, keep the rents low.
Right.
We might have to invest in the project and know that we're not gonna get the money back.
Well, and with this too, it's 250,000 a year.
Yes,
So
that's
for
what's assumed for
15
that.
years. That's an
And after the
estimate.
15 years,
Just 250 times one.
Okay. Right.
once
Times 15.
Matt, once everything's paid off in 15 years, what are the revenues?
Great segues, guys. Can we go to page 8? I have one quick question.
Sure.
Yep.
Really quick.
Why? So, I mean, I see Fraser River Valley
running out of
Partnership
time.
on here, but I see this as the Town of Fraser project, and you guys have the Fraser Housing Authority you created. And I would advocate that the town own this, whether they use their housing authority or not, for control reasons.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Just
Well,
personally, y'all are the ones putting the money in where the town is.
Yeah.
And that's my 2 cents on that.
Some
It's
control
not
of
in here. Yes.
Perfect. Yeah. I agree.
We don't have to make that decision today. I tend to agree with everybody. But ultimately we'll do what gets the project done. And, you know, if you had to make it the partnership, there's a lot of different ways that we can make sure that the town maintains, you know, the appropriate level of control over it, particularly if it's putting capital in. So, okay, this page. Let's go through this. This is specifically the town, right? So this makes an assumption the town owns it, right? All these things kind of change a little bit if not, but we'll again need to address that. Town puts in some upfront capital. We've got it pegged at $2.9 million right now. So you put in some of that already. That's progressed it to where it is now. You're going to see here in another page that we're going to have to move that cap up, which is around $760,000 to by about $320,000 to get us through the machinations of just the facts of life here, that people are changing and seats are changing and you know, we don't want the project to have a delay because of that. But 2.9 million, that's what it's going to take to get us out of the ground towards the third quarter of this year. We do think that you probably be able to get some of that back, again, subject to market conditions, et cetera, when we raise the public debt. So your overall, I don't want to over promise and under deliver. So I left it at 2.9 in here, but let's say that we're hopeful that we can get some of that back to you, once we finance the project. Next is the operating support payments of $250 a year for 15 years. If my math is right, that's 3.75. That allows about an additional $3 million of debt in today's market conditions. An increase of 8 to 10% there. Okay, that's the cost. That's what you're investing. What are you getting? Operating cash flows of around $60 million over the course of I think it was a 45-year pro forma that we have. So those start, in about 15 years after the project comes out of the ground and starts leasing. And that's of course all subject to all the conditions that we've laid out here a few times. But I think it's a not insignificant amount of capital that will start to come back and, will build the town's asset base for doing more projects like this or other improvements that it needs to do. Now it's not tomorrow. It is, not by accident lined up with about the time that your payment in stops. And that, I do want to draw the attention to that because one of the conversations that we had at the open house was building assets for the ability to do more of this later. And you got to have a pretty long view. If your town of Fraser is probably not going anywhere, even in a climate change scenario, you're probably still here. So, you need to, you need to plan long-term. And then the other point that's not on the page, and this is, this is a number to be sort of taken with a little bit of a grain of salt because it has so many inputs into it. But if you assume that prices go up at 2% a year and you take the hard costs of the building and you get to the end of the pro forma, the building would in theory be worth about $104 million if it's maintained. There's a reserve account in the pro forma, so it is expected, and you want to do this, it's expected the building will be maintained. But there's a lot of different points that go in there. Net, you put in about $6.75 million. You get out about, $163 million, and so your net is $157 million. Oh, it's long, over 40, 50 years. But, that's lifetimes of people, right? That's housing. That's what we're talking about here. Questions? Like you read the presentation. Might we switch to the next page? To date, there has been about $800,000, Michael, in the matching for the grant.
Yes, 800 for the acquisition of the land.
Yeah.
For
So
the
for
grant.
acquisition of the land, the town got a grant of about $3 million and put in about $800,000. And then in the process of design and development so far, at the time of printing, we had billed about $345 million. Sorry. Yeah. Thank you guys. It's been great.
Not million.
$345,000. You wonder why those AMIs are so high. So this page here, a lot of numbers, but let me just point out, at the beginning of last year, we agreed with the town a contract of about $762,000 to develop through planning and programming and the project, right? We're most of the way through planning and programming. We've been reasonably conservative with expenditures. We only got through $345,000, not million, $345,000 of that 760. So that's a savings of about 418. We think that we're pretty confident, because we have all the contracts in hand, that between now and May 15th, why May 15th? Because that is a little bit after the second meeting after the board is reseated after elections. So giving everybody a little time to know who's who and make a decision about something like this. In order to get through there with the savings, we would need to raise that $762,000 by $320,000. So we just increased the price cap on the agreement with MAD right now. And I know you can't make that decision here, but just so you have the information.
So just to kind of recap what he just said, that last part, our current agreement that we executed with Mountain Affordable Housing Development, February 2022, three, show the outline for these costs to get through the pre-construction phase. The town agreed to go ahead and pay them up to $762,000, not to exceed that number for the planning and pre-programming phase. That phase actually only cost them $344, so they're able to pass forward that not to exceed remaining amount to apply to the remaining pre-construction work that we need for civil engineering, structural engineering, architectural design, yada, yada, yada. So to keep the ball rolling, and that's the language that's in the agreement, is the board needs to approve additional funds, another not to exceed number to keep the ball rolling per our current agreement. So hope that makes sense to everybody. So we're actually looking at the next meeting, March 20th, to be allocating that $320,000, pulling that from our affordable housing reserve that we have in our general fund that we did budget for, to account for that portion. And I have Lori, our finance director, looking into what we have between our cash available and financing options. Oh my gosh, I said financing instead of financing. Our financing options for providing for that remainder amount, so we could look at some debt to get through the full pre-construction phase, so it's shovel ready. Or we could do a combination of cash, debt, and just see what our options are there. So, we anticipated debt with this from the get-go at some point. So, we're evaluating our options so we can, I don't see a huge deal with us allocating money from our reserves for affordable housing. It's the additional amount to get to the finish line for the pre-construction work. For that total amount of 2.8, right, Matt?
Yep.
That we'll be looking at we're diving into some financial options there to bring that to the board in May. Correct? So,
Yes.
that's our financial plan that we have, that we're working through right now.
Like you guys would bring that along with a sort of draft or later stage draft development agreement to that corporate entity that we reviewed in the structure would sign with the developer and proceed with the project. Right. And just to be crystal clear, the numbers we're talking about here are the numbers to get all of the services for development, right? That's not like our fee.
So one more time.
Which part?
So the number we're looking at here,
This is a
So-
budget, so when we're
Okay.
saying
I would
increase,
say all the services
yes,
for the whole project or just for the?
to get the building C, D, and E and
Okay,
B designed, but the other three out of the ground,
okay.
right? So not construction hard costs, but development costs, permitting costs, platting costs,
Okay.
civil engineering.
Is that for
structural
the
engineering.
road and bridge that we talked about? That we have?
The
to-
road and bridge is in the hard infrastructure costs. So
Yeah.
so the permitting and the sort of additional processes that we have to go through with FEMA and the Corps and the Colorado Parks and Wildlife. Those are like the sort of administrative portion of that's included there, but not the culvert.
Yeah.
Make sense?
That's the next phase.
So just a heads up, the next meeting, we're bringing board approval to allocate $320,000 from our budget for another not to exceed to keep the project on track. Got it.
Right.
And that does
March.
include, I need to go back and line item it out here, I think. But that does include $250,000 of our estimate of the fees incurred sort of in this house with the town, with Baseline, with I can't think of the other guy's name, that Merrick, that helps on the planning and stuff. So to the extent that we can in-house it and not outhouse it, that's not quite right, but let's go with it. Outsource it. There we go. Then we'll be able to lower that, some of the burn rate between now and May, and then between now and the project getting up.
Awesome.
Okay.
Yeah, I see a timely quote
Yes.
from a CML session I did last year, and it says, "Uncertainty leads to opportunity. Embrace it. Fear shuts down creativity and innovation."
I remember that.
Get this built.
I think that
Much better, Matt.
thank you. That was, we never made it through the, slide 800 the last time, but somewhere in there I had a similar quote that said, the only way out is through. Like, if you want to build a project, we have to go through these steps.
Yeah.
You can like it, you could dislike it, you could like us, you can dislike us, but you will go through these steps. So for the time being, since everybody needs houses, let's keep going through the steps.
Awesome.
Okay.
Good.
All right, sounds like a good ending point.
Perfect.
We'll be
Thank you
back
all.
at 6.
Awesome.
Let's-
Thanks, Matt.
At 6.
Yeah,
Thank you guys.
much
Todd.
better. That's
Feel
a
better.
lot of good work.